Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pit Talk, Pulling Pits and Opinions with your host, Gunny G, where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcast and on most and some social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know how we're doing, excuse me. Any criticism is good criticism. I got a special guest, Twitter famous Jarhead Ed, but I'll let him introduce himself here in a second. Again, follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, and follow us on Rumble. Let me know how we're doing. Jarhead Ed, sir, thank you for your service first. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate it for you coming on and sharing your wisdom, your wealth of knowledge. Obviously, I see the little salt and pepper in your beard, so you've obviously got some experience. And two,
It's been a minute.
let the listeners know where you're from, duty stations, operations, where you transitioned from, and what are you doing now?
All right. Well, let's see. Where should I start? I guess just bio, stuff like that. Born in Provo, Utah. Dad eventually, he was an engineer, so he got a job. Florida's a place with lots of defense contractors, places like that. Ended up in Florida and lived there until I joined the Marines at 18, right out of high school, 4 days out of high school. But I was actually in the depth before that. One of my really good friends actually just retired I want to say about 3 or 4 years ago. Sergeant Major Canal, great guy. Talked me into, I guess after he dipped in, recruiters like to go to their poolies and say, "Hey man, bring me names." He's like, basically he was talking to me one day and he's like, "Hey, you should go check it out." I was looking at joining the military, really didn't know which branch yet, but saw a couple of recruiters, wasn't impressed, but he took me to see his recruiter, which eventually became my recruiter. And we were supposed to do buddy program. I ended up being lead series, Paris Island, and he ended up being follow series because the day we were shipping, he had paperwork problems, so he had to ship the next day. But that's okay because we'd be, going to the chow hall, my platoon and his platoon, kind of walk past each other and kind of like give the eyeball, like, what's up? And then, get smoked for breaking military barrier and all that. But it was all good. Yeah, what was it? The day before, they let you go out in your Charlies.
Yeah,
We got
family day.
together and we got together, had Burger King and just kind of like walked around, saw each other's parents and stuff like that. And it was great. And then, kind of stayed in touch off and on up through the years. But after boot camp and MC, ended up in Aberdeen Proving Ground. My MOS was 2171. It was electro-optical ordnance repairer.
Whoa.
Depending on where you're at, if you're assigned to an infantry unit, you're more commonly referred to as the tow tech or like an armorer because you go to the battalion armory. But I got to, not a whole lot, but occasionally got to go with weapons companies since I serviced the tow missile launcher. So at that level, what that pretty much meant was I carried around a bag full of first echelon spare parts, couplers, wires, stuff like that, and switched stuff out. If it didn't work, hoofed it back to the armory, got another system, came back out, that kind of stuff. Did that, MOS school's about 6-7 months or so. So after MOS school from Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, went to 29 Palms, California with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, H&S Company, right to the armory. Loved it there. Great place, despite what people say about 29 Palms. It's great. At first, I got there and, I don't know if you've ever been to 29 Palms, but everybody seems to arrive at night, whether it's, on a bus or driving themselves in, and you just kind of like, come out and you're like, what is this? Just one Adobe road going right into Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center. But it was great. I really learned a lot there. Really liked 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. I always kind of like considered that my home. So that was the first place in the fleet I ended up. Did a couple of UDP deployments. This was pre 9/11. So when I got there was 97. So 98 did a UDP deployment to Okinawa.
All right.
Awesome. I don't know if the Marine Corps is still doing that, but it was great. That was first time out of the country.
Not to interrupt. They do, you know how they do Murph D, right? Australia.
Yeah.
So now they do Murph.
I never went there. Yeah.
So they're not Asia. You know where they go? Guam.
No,
they go to Thailand. Wow. They go to
Thailand's nice.
The Philippines. So I'm like, man, Murph D sucks compared to Murph Asia, dude. But continue.
Yeah, I've been to a few of those places. I never got to go to Guam. I got to go to Thailand, Cobra Gold, for my first UDP, or not my first UDP deployment, but from Okinawa. But Okinawa was awesome. Got to go back again in 2000. I was shortly after I got married. Went back to Okinawa. It was awesome. Came back and got promoted, and then from 1-7 went to, at the time it was called CSSG-1, which was a third echelon maintenance facility. I think they eventually ended up calling it CLB-7 right around the time people were deploying to Iraq and stuff like that. Like for, ended up there pre 9/11, actual 9/11. I was in the rifle range there in 29 Palms. I just finished my course of fire. We headed down the Butts, just started to get targets set up, and then the Pitts, boss called down, and he's like, "Yeah, pack up, get back on the trucks, head back to your unit." And I mean, it was just base wide. All the commanders were talking to their people, and it was like, I think everyone's CO had the same talk. It was like, we don't know what's going on, bad stuff's happening, and we could very well end up in a combat situation. And this was like, I think that line of demarcation between peacetime Marine Corps into GWAT right there, which was, I think everybody kind of has a personal story about where they were when that happened.
Yeah.
And I was in 29 Palms. So,
In that Palms in the States.
That's right. And then, let's see, we didn't go anywhere right away because we were in 29 Palms. So I think a lot of Pendleton folks actually went to Afghanistan. I can't remember exactly who, but we actually didn't deploy until the invasion of Iraq. So we went to Kuwait in 03, it was February of 03, and ended up, was it like March 18th, March 19th or something, was we all kind of out over the border and did that whole thing. And that whole, like the whole first 2 weeks of that was just a blur. Like I think everyone was moving so fast. And it's just, we were just following the grunts, right? So it's like they went through and did all the stuff, and then we would just see the carnage behind them, and it was just like, man, this is crazy. But like, we're all in the back of it was, I almost said 5-ton. It wasn't. It was those big Oshkosh 7-ton things, whatever those are, whatever they're
in the
calling
rear
those
with
these
the
days.
gear.
Yeah, but we're kind of all in the back, and everybody's got their, rifles faced out, and everybody's super serious. And, every time we stop, got to get out and pull security and stuff like that. But it was, man, I think it was like, it's probably the same story for everybody during that time. I think it was like a couple of weeks. Didn't matter whether you were an infantry guy or a pogue or whatever. You didn't sleep. Not a whole lot anyway. And I mean,
I hear my
yeah.
my uncle Nando Hernandez, retired master guns. Same thing, man. He was out there in Iraq, and
Right on.
it was like everybody and their mother was getting some. It was not like it was a holds bar. It was just, you had a rifle, you were shooting down range. It was crazy.
Yeah, I fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how some people look at that, I never had to fire my weapon. Not
Well,
any
that's good,
time I
man.
deployed Iraq. But one of our staff sergeants, since we were, in the maintenance battalion, one of our staff sergeants, I guess he thought he saw something. And what was it? Because he was in a Hercules. Was it like a 240 that they had or something like that? The Hercules recovery vehicle for the tanks and stuff. So I think they were like in front of us, and we hear, we're like, what is it? He's shooting something. Everybody's like, oh shit. Start taking stuff up and paying attention. We don't know what he was shooting at to this day, but he was shooting at something. Probably a combination of too much caffeine and not enough sleep. But, but yeah, that deployment ended up winding down. Actually, and I'll go into it later because there's some mental health stuff in that, but just kind of sake of brevity for the whole bio thing. Ended up coming back from that deployment, finishing up my time in 29 Palms. I think right around this time, I think it was actually before that deployment, I was promoted to sergeant. Came back, ran the optics shop there at CLB-7 for a little while. Eventually got orders to go recruiting. Well, real quick, before that, I think it was about a year after that deployment, 04, 05, got the opportunity to, like, they asked, I think it was like 40 of us, 50 of us, just volunteers. Hey, going to go augment a unit that's going to go to Alta Cottam Air Base and do security. So we're taking volunteers. So I was like, hey, this could be pretty good for my career. So I volunteered. A bunch of us went and we got assigned to an artillery unit to not do our MOSs. It was just like, I don't know what they call it, provincial security, or it was basically just running ECPs, very little patrolling outside the wire, not like anything the grunts were doing. There was little roads out there. You're just making sure people were staying off roads, just kind of keeping an eye on stuff. And then internal security. So, rolling around, making sure that the empty spaces on TQ, there wasn't people trying to like come through the wire or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I actually got in a vehicle rollover during that deployment, got all messed up, and didn't have to leave the country or anything, just basically was bedridden for a couple of months, and then finished up that deployment, came back, got orders to go recruiting, and I thought recruiting was going to be the end of the world, to be perfectly honest. I was like, this is where careers go to die. And I was like, I didn't have it. Honestly, like the guy I joined with went to go be a drill instructor. He was a hard charger. I mean, honestly, he was one of the best Marines I've ever known, and just poster child. And I can confidently tell you that I was a little above average, if that. I'm modest, I just love my job, man. I love being a Marine, but I was not a poster child, and I hated the PT, but I did it,
Yeah.
But I was recruiting, and I was like, oh God, this is gonna suck.
Yeah.
So, you go through I don't know how it was. I think I watched one of your things. Weren't you a DI? Didn't you go be a DI?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably the same thing when you do your package, right? To go do your B build or whatever. You got to go talk to, your unit. Hey, you ready for this? You got to go do this. Make sure that don't have any outstanding tickets or, the usual garbage. Get all your paperwork together get all the briefs, and then we had to go to first, was it first Mardiv we had to go to? No, first FSSG. I'm sorry. I still had the 1-7 mindset. First FSSG in Pendleton, see the first FSSG Sergeant Major, and this guy was just like the most grizzled looking Sergeant Major. He was great guy. I can't remember his name. Not all there. No, not all there. He was talking, we went into his office, and first off, it's Pendleton, so it's hot, right? It was real hot. This was, because my school didn't start until the fall, so this is like July. In July in Pendleton, just hot. So we're in alphas, and I had to rush because the alphas I had brand new tailored whatever. They screwed up my rank. I went in there, and they screwed it up even more. So, and this was a tailor place I used out in town in 29 Palms forever. They knew me for years. I was there almost 9 years. They knew me. I knew everybody in that, like a lot of people in that town. I ended up meeting my wife in that town, but they screwed up my only fitting pair of alphas. And I was like, oh my God. And of course I heard it from everybody else. They're like, oh, you don't have another pair? What kind of NCO are you? And I was like, apparently a crappy one. I was like, it is what it is. So, I did what any other good Marine would do, and I adapted and I overcame. I had some buddies that were close to my size that were also sergeants. They're like, man, this isn't going to be exactly right, but it'll get you there. So I get there, and the first thing the Sergeant Major does is he stands us all up because we're all there to see him for whatever recruiting, sign off, or, hey, you're fixing to go recruiting, you're fixing to do this. And he does uniform inspection right there, and I'm just like, what's going on here? And he just rips me up one side, down the other. He calls my command. I'm like, hear from them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a bag of shit. So yeah, I didn't look bad. It was just, I think it was linked issues or whatever. But, I took it to heart. And I'm like, man, I'm fixing to start this whole career thing. So I heard it from my command. And I get back, and I have to go see the Sergeant Major next day in that uniform. But I go there. He's like, what's the problem? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what the problem was. I was like, I'm feeling it. You get your ass on your shoulders. You're just like, you're feeling it. He's like, you know what? You're fine. You'll be fine. So anyway, go to recruiter school. Was a recruiter school, soon to be wife, or no, brand new, just married a few months before, second wife. Her dad commits suicide. He was a Vietnam era Marine. Yeah. So usually when they call you up in school like that, you're not finishing school. My wife at the time, she's like, no, this is huge for your career. You need to go through. So we ended up talking to the Sergeant Major there. And he's like, we got a long weekend coming up. You go back, help your wife, and then be back here Monday morning. So it's like, okay, no problem. So go handle that, come back, graduate recruiter school, which was great. Recruiter school had a really good instructor for recruiter school. If it wasn't for TBI, I'd probably be able to remember his name, but great instructor. I got the face right here. I can't. I'm so horrible with. I'm going to forget your name right after this. I'm kidding. Who can forget Gunny Garcia? Yeah, but no, it was really I did pretty good in recruiter school. It kind of brought me out. I was kind of an introvert, but you gotta have the gift of gab. If you're talking to folks, especially if you want to sell them on the idea of being a Marine. So yeah, recruiter school. Ended up going to. I got assigned to RS Sacramento. So and out of Sacramento's got kind of a big area that they deal with. So I ended up in Reno, Nevada. And Reno is, aside from, I think Carson City, yeah. Carson City is like their outskirts kind of, where Reno's just in that. But Reno, great place to be. Great, especially for recruiting. Great place. And recruiting for me was kind of I guess, two sides of a coin. The real shitty side and then the real awesome side. And it's just like any other billet, right? The first year and a half really stunk because our NCOIC was an awful person. Everybody, I think, has horrible NCOIC stories, but this guy, he takes the cake. I still keep in contact with a lot of my recruiter buddies, especially the ones that I served with there. And we're still real close. And we all agree this guy was just awful. I mean, he used to call us up with our planning results book, the planner that recruiters carry around on, and hey, how many appointments you got today? No, that's a crappy appointment. And I mean, this guy, with every bit of Copenhagen that he spit in the trash can, he'd grab your book and he'd throw it in that same trash can. And I don't remember this, but my coworkers, my, the guys I recruited with were like, I guess there was one day, because I had a remote office I also manned in Susanville, California, aside from the RSS. I guess I was heading out there one day, and I was just driving around the parking lot in my Govy. And they said that every time I crossed in front of the recruiting station, I was going like this and like pointing. And they're like, because I guess it was right after I got my ass chewed for something that the NCOIC didn't like. But eventually he retired, and we got the good NCOIC, the best one, a guy named Master Sergeant Mike Pisecki. He pretty much wrote recruiting. He was awesome. Probably one of the best, even to this day, I count him amongst the top 3 best bosses I've ever worked for. And he was great. And I mean, he made recruiting fun, whereas the first one didn't, the second one. And I was an average recruiter. I wasn't like a superstar. I had runs here and there where I did a little bit better than above average, but I was average recruiter, But eventually, recruiting is kind of where my career stopped. And I'll go into that stuff a little bit later, but not for anything bad, but physical from, getting the whole rollover thing started to catch up to me. And I wanted to reenlist, but I was denied reenlistment because my PFT just sucked. It did. I just wasn't competitive. And so I ended up, as soon as it was like, determined I wasn't going to be able to reenlist and was kind of planning what I was going to do, I wasn't done serving yet. So I walked to the Army recruiter's office. I said, "Hey man, who wants a bone?" Which is like, recruiters call that like, an easy right? Who wants a bone right now? And I knew all those guys because I made fun of them. Like every time I saw them at the high schools or anything, they're like, "Hey, are you serious?" I was like, there was a bar across the street and called Napper Tandy's that we all went to. Nice Irish pub. And I said, "Hey, whoever wants to write me is to go in the Army, go across. I'll be in the bar across the street." So one of the guys comes over there and he's like, "What's up?" And I buy him a beer. And I already had my 680 and, my 680 initial recruiting package, everything written. I wrote it. I'm like, "Here you go." Bam, there it is. He goes, "What's this?" I go, "That is the introductory paperwork to my recruiting package." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah. All of our paperwork's the same. It's not like it says UMC at the top. It's a DD 680, So we talked for a while, and he ended up being my recruiter. And I mean, it was not like I left Reno in any kind of bad spirits, but they all understood. In fact, my Master Sergeant Pisecki was pretty sad. He's like, "Usually I get my way." And he's like, "I did not. This is one of those few times I didn't get my way." And he's like, "It just is what it is, man. Marines are competitive. You got to be competitive, and you're no longer competitive." So my transition from the Marines to the Army was pretty easy. I didn't have to be on the bag anymore, writing contracts. I pretty much just did administrative stuff and then got out and joined the Army. Yeah, the Army sucks, man. I did not like it. I tell you what, let me revise that. The Army's great if you're going to be like an infantry guy or like a high speed, 18 series dude or that. Army's great, right? For those guys. Those guys are cool. When you bump into those guys, they're awesome. But if you're just like I ended up being, I think originally I was going to be EOD and I got hurt in EOD school. And I think I bombed one test too, ordnance ID. I flubbed, but I was already hurt. I fell in the bomb suit. They make you take a bomb suit test where you got to run around and do a bunch of, they wear your ass out in the bomb suit. And I fell and I hurt my back. Again, more injuries creeping back up on me from when I got rollover in Humvee. But yeah, so I ended up reclassing to Signal, ended up in Georgia, where I'm at now, Augusta, Georgia, Fort Gordon, where that's the Army's Signal Corps, and basically ended up as a CPN team chief, which is like, if you're going to get assigned to a unit, I guess the Army's version of COM, ended up being a CPN team chief, which we got, the unit I was in was the Expeditionary Signal Battalion, got assigned whenever you deploy, you go support a unit. Actually ended up deploying to Iraq with the Army once before I retired, and got to go with they call them like tank squadrons, but it was 3rd ACR, like cavalry tanks, whatever, to Diwanee, Iraq. So 3rd deployment to Iraq, last deployment. It was uneventful. We did pretty good there. Came back, and I ended up getting medically retired just because, again, injuries and everything started to catch up. A little bit of PTSD and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. Ended up retiring, medically retired, 17 and a half years. Really tried to go
right
20.
Right before.
But I got retirement, so I'm good.
Yeah.
I got it.
That's
I got
good.
a full retirement on a retired list. It just says Sergeant U.S. Army next to my name instead of, you get it. I mean,
I get
once
it.
a Marine, always a Marine. But and even now, my buddies are like, "Hey, weren't you in the Army?" I was like, "Yep." They're like, "Why do you always wear Marine stuff?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's right. What do you want to hear about that?" But that's pretty much it. Yeah. So.
How was your transition from uniform to service force?
That was hard. I'm going to tell you. I mean, I think that's a common thread. I thought it was going to be great. I was like, yeah, I'm retiring. Right. It's like all my buddies, like, we're going to be at 20, I was calling up. I'm like, I'm retiring. I was like, get that vet. I still have it here. The Marine vet hat. It's got the, what I'm talking about, right? I was like, going to grow the beard, going to grow my hair out. I'm going to get fat. It's going to be great. Be retired. About 4 years removed, right, from the time I joined the Army to the time I retired. You still have mindset, right? Inspect what you expect kind of stuff. Buck stops here. You take a lot of ownership for what you do. So everything I did, I took a lot of ownership. I had a lot of jobs at Fort Gordon here, and Army bases are weird. Things you don't normally see on like Marine bases. They had like a gambling hall on this base here. I don't know if it's still open now. Yeah, it was like a bingo hall, but like gambling. They gamble there. And I went and I got a job with MWR, and they're like, yeah, we have an opening over here. You could be a cashier. And I'm like, part-time, this is awesome. I can use my GI Bill and go to school, and I can just work part-time over here. Yeah, that job was awful. It was horrible because people, you kind of expect people, even in MWR, you expect them to have, live by a certain code, and they don't at all. They were awful, awful people. And being around gamblers, I mean, gamblers are just, ew. They're just something else, man. It's just like, eventually I quit that job. I went to go work at the post office, and you'd think, I'm like, okay, government agency, post office, right? A little bit closer to being, not quite being in the military. This should be okay. No, it's not. The town I live in now, I ended up being, going through all the training, being a mail carrier, and everyone that was in the class with me that got assigned to the post office where I ended up working, their routes were great. And the thing is with the post office is when you get there in the morning, you sort all your mail, you sort all the junk mail in with everything else, you load your truck up and you go. If you work for an hour and you're done, you still get paid for the rest of the day. You just go home, right? But usually mail's got to be done by like 5, and because it's got to go back to the plant, they call it the central hub, right, which is where I'm at, it's Augusta. And I had, man, it was like God's mail route. It was huge. There were so many houses, and it was like 4 different developments. It was, I don't know, there's probably guys that are like mailmen now listening to that going, that's nothing. Let me tell you something. It is hard when you're just like used to being able to do stuff and you're just like, I'm going to brute force my way through something, and to be faced with something that you just can't do. Eventually I was like, you know what? This is nuts. And I go, I don't know what it was that it was just, it didn't mesh with me. So at that point I was already about, I was halfway through my bachelor's degree. I was taking a bachelor's degree in computer science, and which I don't know why I picked that, going from being a Marine to like, I'm going to be a programmer. But it was great. I was doing good. And I was like, about halfway through it, I told my wife, I said, hey, GI Bill pays a stipend, so it's pretty good, kind of help with the bills and stuff like that. So I think I'm just going to focus on schoolwork and get this done. And it ended up working out. I think that was the right play because it allowed me to focus a little bit more on my schoolwork. I mean, I went from being like in high school, like barely graduating to like almost 4.0. You hear that a lot. A lot of veterans do that, right? So I
Yeah.
think I was 3.9 something, ended up graduating with a really high average. But I did
Congratulations.
good. Yeah, I tell people, I'm like, if everybody, most everyone I know gets educational benefits, use them. I mean, even if it's just to get the stipend, use them. You earned them, you paid into it, use it. But I end up getting my bachelor's, and shortly thereafter, got hired on to do as an intern, basically at one of the DOE complexes. They're pretty close to where I'm at in South Carolina. And Department of Energy does a lot of wide stuff, but it's like, if you know what Los Alamos is, it's like Los Alamos just in South Carolina. There's like 5 different DOE complexes around the country. So I ended up being an intern there, and then eventually I liked it a lot. I was doing stuff in the field of my degree, and went and bugged my manager. I'm like, hey, like a Marine would do. Like, you go in and, knock on the door and, hey, boss, I want to work here. You got a job for me? He's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Let me ask. Then you ask around it. I think every day for like a month, I'd go in there and see him at the end of the day. Hey, boss, how you doing? Hey, you got a job for me? And eventually he's like, hey, quit asking. Stop asking me. I'm like, well, I just want to let you know I really want to work here. This place is great. And he's like, okay, fine. So about a week goes by and I get a phone call from one of the managers. He's like, hey, you Edward? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, hey, let's talk about it. I heard you want to work here. I got a position that's open. So we talked for about an hour. And then the next day I get an offer. So I didn't know that was my interview, but I mean, I was just, answering questions, and eventually got a job to be a system administrator for running some applications for our engineering department. And I still do that to this day. So it's been like, let's see, 10 years, a little bit more, almost 10 years. So I've been doing that.
I will say, Ed, as long as I would deep dive in some stuff, but I'm short on time, and I'm sure your time is precious too. We're not getting paid for this. This is just kind of networking, chopping it up. So
Right on.
I do got to ask. So
Mhm.
you're medically retired, 10 years late. You're here now doing the whole shebang, computer science thing. Do you ever really transition? Like,
No,
is it's so ingrained in you that you ever transition fully?
when I have dreams and I see myself, my dreams, I still have very short, medium rate haircut. I'm wearing M81 old camis because that's what I had when I came in, sometimes Marpats. In fact, it turns into a nightmare real quick because I feel my beard. I'm like, holy shit, I have a beard. Oh my God, Platoon Sergeant's going to wreck me. I'm going to get destroyed, going to Monday morning, uniform inspection. No, man.
What's
Yeah.
what's one thing, when you reminisce, and because you're not fully transitioned up here, what's one thing, the first thing you think of when you start reminiscing besides the beard?
I wish that I said before that I was kind of average, right? I do have regrets about my career. I wish that I would have put in a little bit more effort. Honestly, I think looking back and, especially spanning across 2 branches, being a Marine's the best thing in the world. And that's like, number 1 pick in the draft kind of stuff, right? And it's just like, you don't know what you have until it's gone kind of stuff. And that was a lot of stuff that was hard for me to deal with transitioning. So I wouldn't say I didn't take things seriously. I think I would have done things a little bit more deliberately, but yeah, that's
How do
just
you
a mindset that, yeah.
what do you struggle with you talked about some mental health. I want to touch there a little bit real quick. Through Army, through
Yeah,
Marine Corps, tell me what you struggle with now. I mean, do you still struggle with now? And what tool?
yeah.
Name one tool that you use daily that gets you out of the funk.
So I think anybody that has spent any kind of significant amount of time in the military, especially if you deployed, even if you haven't, it depends. It's a high stress environment, high tempo, right? That's not good for your mindset. You got to decompress. And sometimes the military doesn't let you decompress. So you have to find mechanisms to get around that. And instead, like, I think this is what the Marines is great at, right? They say embrace the suck, but people don't really know what that means. That means you foster, you cultivate a fortitude that is diamond hard, right? That you can't be defeated. And that's pretty much what got me through any hard time I had. When I was in Iraq the first time, I ended up getting a Dear John letter from my wife at the time. Typical, you know, stereotypical, stuff that happened, except it had happened before I left. She was already started before I left, but, figured it was a good opportunity. A lot of dudes that went through that committed suicide because, how can you blame them? It ends that you're at war, doesn't matter what you're doing over there, you're serving your country. I'm not going to say I didn't have dark thoughts, but the only thing that snapped me out of that was that I had people that depended on me, my own parents, they love me, family loves me, and it would be worse to put them through that. So I started to cultivate it was present in my mind, but I started to cultivate a just diamond hard resolve. I'm going to get through it. Right? I will. This too shall pass. Something my dad used to always say to me, this will pass. Getting run over, right? That was scary. I thought I was going to die, even though the vehicle was only on top of me for a split second. And my legs were pinned under it, but still, you're scared. Afterwards, everything's done, and you're kind of laying in bed, and you're hurt and everything. You're going to get through it. Diamond hard resolve. This too shall pass. Not being able to re-enlist. I think that sucked worse than my first wife cheating on me, to be perfectly honest. That was rough. But, had family that depend on me, kids depend on me. This too shall pass. And you have to be harder than the stuff that is bothering you. And I mean, it sounds kind of cliche to say that, but honestly, you only have that choice. You can't be defeated. You have to win. There is only one defeat, and that's when you die. That's it. And you just got to keep going. So that's what gets me through. If there's anything that, like, everyone depends on me. I can't afford to break down. I can't afford to give up. That's it. This too shall pass. So that's kind of like my mantra. And it does. It always gets better.
Yeah, I tell you what, those ones that are struggling right now with mental health and taking the 30-inch step in the wrong direction, man. Listen to Ed.
Yeah.
It shall pass. It's people. You are obligated to people, whether you think so or not. People depend on you, and they're watching and listening for your good. I mean, not to say that there's not people that are out for your bad, but in terms of what we're talking about, you have obligation. People depend on you. Mom and dad, they want you here. You need to be here. It shall pass, man. That's good. That's good, God, Jed. I'll tell you what. It hit me, man. I'll tell you what, because just like you, we have some dark thoughts even on active duty, and I'll say what, at the end of the day, it shall pass. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's always the practice of sleep, right, death, and then waking up to a new day, so a new start, fresh beginnings. We'll do it right back again, and that resolve just gets better and stronger every single day. So for those struggling,
Mm-hmm.
that listen to Ed's words of advice, it shall pass. I'm telling you, it'll build hard resolve. Easier said than done, right? Obviously, it takes practice through experience, right, Ed?
Yeah.
I think you can hear on that. But if they want to know more about you, Ed, where can they reach you at?
I spend probably entirely too much time on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it these days. I like to comment on a wide variety of stuff. I'm into firearms, so mostly a lot of people I kind of mess around with and chop it up with are in gun Twitter. But just like it says there, at jar_head_ed, jarhead ed. If you search that on there, my little profile thing is like a little sunset thing I made in Photoshop, so pretty easy to see. Say what's up, drop me a DM, whatever. But yeah, that's probably where it's a good place to be. Lots of cool people.
Hell yeah. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it's Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with your host, Gunny G, and Jarhead Ed, Edward Salintano, right? Salintano. Said that right?
Salatino,
For service.
close. Yeah.
Okay. where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcast and on most and some social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism. Ladies and gentlemen, me and Ed, though, we out. Ed, I'll be hitting you up later for a picture. And if you need anything, you have my number. Don't be a stranger. I'll talk to you later, dog. Thanks.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Yeah, bruh.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Stand by, contact. Ceasefire. Stand by, contact. Ceasefire.
Pit Talk is a podcast featuring active service members who discuss their thoughts and opinions on various issues surrounding military life, current events, and history. The statements heard here are the opinions of its members and guests. These do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense and are not endorsed or sponsored in any way. Listener, viewer discretion advised.